It was just our 23rd anniversary, but I had hoped it would be special. Unfortunately, a last-minute business conference threw a wrench in the works. I packed for the 3 days in Baltimore and grabbed a quick bite before leaving. "Michelle, I promise I'll make it up to you." Roberts insisted I attend this seminar. I looked over the agenda and didn't see anything particularly important, but he's the boss. "Don't worry about it, Ryan. Huck it even when we go to Europe for the 25th. We can go somewhere nice this weekend when you get back." Michelle and I had been married since college, and we have 2 daughters, Haley and Ashley, who are both in college. I had been with Beeman's International for about 10 years and was doing well. I put in a lot of hours and traveled quite a bit. Michelle didn't seem to mind and found ways to occupy herself while I was away. Our marriage was good, and our intimate life was fine. Besides my demanding work schedule, everything seemed okay in my life. We socialized occasionally, mostly at office functions, but sometimes with friends in the neighborhood. The girls were both fairly independent and only relied on us for tuition and some spending money. They both worked while on campus. Michelle and I met, began dating, and marriage followed naturally. There was no whirlwind romance or storybook episodes, just a straightforward progression that might seem dull to some. While I was of average appearance, Michelle was quite attractive. I stood tall, a full head taller than Michelle, and she often wore heels to even things out when we went out together. Her dark brown hair was starting to show a few gray streaks, giving her a sophisticated look. She jogged about 3 times a week to maintain her weight, and she was undeniably a fine-looking woman whom any man would be proud to have by his side. "I'll call you once I'm settled in and give you the room number. We'll likely be busy most of the afternoon and evening. They have some late scheduled activities. If it goes on too long, I won't call tonight," I told Michelle. "Don't worry, Ryan. I have plenty to keep me occupied. The girls dropped off some laundry this weekend, and the new book club edition arrived yesterday. Don't fret about me. I'll see you on Friday evening," Michelle reassured me. After a quick kiss, I headed off to Baltimore, taking the back roads for the 3-hour drive. I despised the interstate. With the meeting starting after lunch, I had ample time to settle in. I called Michelle to let her know I had arrived safely. The frustrating part was that there was nothing new being presented. I had read the agenda beforehand, yet I still expected more. I couldn't understand why they had sent me to a conference that felt redundant. I was thoroughly irritated after the last session of the afternoon, when they announced that we were all going out for a special celebration dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Despite there being 2 locations in Baltimore, they decided to take us to the one in Philly, where we had a corporate account. As we arrived in Philadelphia, the rain poured down. They had arranged 2 special tables for our group in a private meeting room. Given the prices they charge, I'm sure they didn't want a rowdy bunch disturbing the paying customers. After we all placed our orders, I excused myself to visit the men's room. The lighting in the restaurant was dim, but I could still spot my wife, Michelle, sitting at a secluded table with Patrick Roberts. She was impeccably dressed, as if she had gone to the salon. Michelle only does that for special occasions, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Then it hit me. Tonight was special because it was our wedding anniversary. As I stood across the room, everything became much clearer. Now I understood why I was constantly on overnight business trips and attending seminars. I had no idea Michelle was so close to Patrick Roberts, especially considering he was married. We had never socialized with Patrick and his wife, and I didn't even know when or how they managed to start a relationship. At this point, it didn't matter anymore. It seemed like our trip to Europe would never happen. The restaurant exuded elegance, and I was keen not to disturb anyone's meal, so I opted for discretion. I made my way to the corner of the room near the restroom hallway, affording me a view of both Michelle and the conference room. I had assumed Michelle would silence her cell phone given the circumstances, but she didn't. "Hi, honey. It's Ryan. I tried the house phone, but got no answer." Michelle attempted to use her cell phone discreetly, a challenging task in such a busy and upscale dining spot. "Sorry, Ryan. I'm in the basement and missed the call." "I thought you weren't going to ring. What's up?" Patrick's expression turned sour as Michelle attempted to keep her voice down. "Just wanted to let you know I'm on my way home. The conference ended early. I should be there in about an hour. See you soon." "What? Hold on a minute, Ryan. The washer is acting up." Michelle quickly covered the phone with her hand, conversing with Patrick urgently. Her facial expressions and hand gestures betrayed the urgency of the situation. Patrick swiftly dialed a number on his phone, his actions lightning fast. Meanwhile, across the room, the conference director answered his own cell phone. Patrick's conversation with the person on the other end of the line was brief. Fear flashed across Michelle's face as Patrick relayed what he had just heard. Slowly, she brought the phone back to her mouth. "Ryan, where are you? I think you know the answer to that. You look lovely in that black dress. It complements the pearls I got you last Christmas. Don't bother coming back home tonight. I'll be moving out tomorrow. Oh, and happy anniversary. Ryan, please, we need to talk." That phrase, they always say that. It's probably the dumbest thing a woman caught cheating can say, but they always say it. The rain was pouring down as I left the restaurant. My car was in Baltimore, leaving me stranded in Philly. I began walking towards downtown, and within minutes, I was drenched. Yet somehow, I didn't mind. My phone rang incessantly, but I ignored it. Eventually, I switched it off to conserve battery. Missing out on the free Ruth's Chris steak dinner felt like a loss, until I stumbled upon a cheese steak shop. I was feeling low, but the cheese steak sandwich was the best I'd ever tasted. Renting a car and heading home would have been the easy option, but I didn't really want to go home. Home was comfortable with all my belongings, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't convince myself it was necessary to go there. From the steak shop, it was just a short walk to the nearest bar. After 6 drafts, I was ready for bed. I woke up in a seedy motel room, likely rented by the hour. My suit was ruined from the previous night's weather. 3 blocks away was the bus station. I bought a razor and shaving cream from a vending machine, and a few minutes later, I looked somewhat presentable. A pair of chinos and a polo shirt set me back less than $20 at a nearby store. I donated my suit and white shirt to Goodwill. By that time, the banks were open. Although I don't reside in Philadelphia, most of the banks and companies I deal with have their offices or headquarters there. I swiftly closed my checking and savings accounts, even withdrawing the funds from my daughter's college fund. When I informed the mortgage department of my decision to relinquish my home loan, they were taken aback. They couldn't understand why. Given I had over $60,000 in equity, there was no need for foreclosure. Nevertheless, they eventually conceded it was a good deal for them and allowed me to sign the release forms, though they insisted on my wife's signature as well. With a smirk, I informed them that was their problem. I also canceled my bank credit card after settling the balance. Fortunately, I had accumulated a substantial sum in my whole life insurance policies. The company agreed to send the checks to my sister in Savannah. Fidelity Mutual Funds also agreed to mail the checks for my closed account. My cell phone battery died, but a friendly secretary lent me her phone to call work. My department head at work was displeased with my sudden departure. Despite his counteroffers to retain me, he politely pressed for the reason behind my abrupt decision. He wasn't thrilled to hear that Patrick Roberts had been keeping me occupied to pursue my wife. I explained that it was a done deal and beyond fixing. Before transferring me to the personnel office, he assured me that Roberts would face consequences. Personnel readily agreed to send my final checks for pay, profit sharing, sick leave, and accrued vacation pay to my sister's address. A sympathetic secretary even provided me with Patrick Roberts' home phone number. I made 2 additional phone calls to cancel 2 more credit cards. An hour later, I boarded the bus to Baltimore. My plan was to retrieve my car and gather the few belongings I had left in the hotel room. The journey from Baltimore to Savannah would take a full day. My sister, Christina, and I were close, so I decided to confide in her and inform her about some checks that were coming to her house. I turned on my cell phone to charge it in the car, ignoring the several calls that came in during that time. Once settled, I resolved to get a new number. With many hours on the road, there was ample time for reflection. I couldn't fathom what motivated Michelle to leave with Patrick Roberts. I questioned if I had played a role in it, or if I was merely a bystander. It seemed I had fallen short as a husband in some way. However, after some contemplation, I realized I no longer felt the need to assign blame. It was time to let go and move forward. I regretted not having my birth certificate, passport, and car title with me. I would have to manage without them, or find a way to retrieve them. Fortunately, I had my laptop and briefcase. As for the cell phone charger, I could make do, as I wouldn't be using it much anyway. My medical insurance was still valid for 90 days, but I wasn't anticipating any health issues. About an hour outside Baltimore, I phoned Patrick Roberts' wife. Patrick had been let go that morning for reasons he claimed were unspecified. She thanked me for providing a bit more detail and found retribution for both her and me. I felt he deserved at least that much. Then I called Christina to let her know I was on my way. "Welcome, my wandering brother," Christina greeted me from the front porch as I arrived. "Your wife called twice, trying to track you down, but wouldn't divulge why it was urgent or why you might be visiting your sister. I suppose you'll enlighten me now, or I'll have to kick your butt." The porch boasted 4 rocking chairs and an ice chest, likely stocked with beer. Christina, being older and perhaps wiser, took a seat and gestured for me to join her. "Judging by your expression, I'm guessing this was something you didn't anticipate," she said. "I never saw it coming and certainly never expected it. Your little brother got hit out of nowhere and could use some comforting words," I replied, accepting a cold beer and a sympathetic smile from Christina. The rockers were strategically placed for us to prop our feet up on the porch railing and watch the passing traffic. Christina and her husband, Gary, had bought the old 2-story brick house 20 years ago. Fortunately, Gary was handy, as he had to replace a lot of the lower structure's wood. Termites wreak havoc in damp coastal areas. Their investment had paid off, as the house was now part of the Savannah Historical District. I suspect infidelity. Am I correct? Yep. And who's the cheating one, Michelle or Ryan? Well, I'm too socially inept to even meet another woman, so it must have been her. Christina pondered for a moment. I wasn't trying to be clever, but it was hard to outright say my wife cheated on me. "Well, Ryan, that's unexpected. I never thought Michelle would do something like that. How did it happen?" "Don't know, don't care. It seems she got involved with my boss, and he started sending me out of town on business trips so they could be together. It was just luck that I found out. I had no clue. I didn't confront her. I just left." "Is there a chance you're mistaken?" "No. She lied to my face about it while it was happening. She told me on the phone she was home doing laundry, but she was sitting in a restaurant with him, 30 feet away from me. There was no doubt. Of course, I never caught them in the act, but I'm pretty sure it happened at some point. Is there any chance of reconciliation?" "It's never going to happen." We opened another bottle and sat in silence for about 10 minutes. It was the first time I acknowledged what had happened, and it didn't feel good. "Why don't you freshen up for dinner? Gary will be home in a couple of minutes. You two can catch up while I get some shrimp boiled. He doesn't know anything, so it's up to you if you want to tell him. I won't say anything if you prefer." "Just tell him, Christina. It's better not to sweep something like this under the rug." I spent 2 days with Christina and Gary. They had 2 sons who were both married and living on their own. Gary had gained a few pounds, so he had plenty of extra clothes he wanted to give away. I gladly accepted them, as I needed some. Christina agreed to hold on to any checks or other mail that arrived for me until I could provide a forwarding address. I didn't know where I was headed next. Michelle called once the next day, but Christina told her she hadn't seen me. I asked Christina to call my daughters at college after I left and explain the situation as best she could. It was important to me that they knew their tuition would be taken care of. I wasn't ready to face that myself. Before leaving town, I got a new cell phone number and bought 2 pairs of comfortable shoes. I avoided the interstate and took old Route 301 south instead. The best part about being in the area was being able to have Crystal for lunch and Waffle House for breakfast. What more could a man want? I slept in the car the first night, parked between 2 enormous RVs in a Walmart parking lot. One of the nice things about Crystal, besides the sliders, is the free Wi-Fi. I didn't really have a pressing need for the internet, but it was comforting to know it was there if I did. As I drove along the street near Ryan's River, somewhere near Palatka, a stroke of luck changed my day for the better. It was mid-morning when I pulled into a small gas station, dock, and restaurant combo for a refuel. The place was a bit rundown, situated about 100 yards off the main road, but visible from the bridge crossing the river. Its gravel parking lot and weathered dock, which seemed to have once been a bustling marina, spoke of its history. The 2-story restaurant, half on the dock and half on land, hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in at least a decade. Across the street stood 3 aging mobile homes, matching the worn-out appearance of the restaurant. The gas station seemed tailored for boaters cruising the waterway, as indicated by the sign out front, Sadie's Catfish House. Memories of my high school days working at Captain D's flooded back, giving me a nostalgic twinge. Carefully navigating my way down towards the river, I couldn't help but notice the place was in need of some TLC. 2 teenage boys sat quietly on the dock, simply gazing out at the water. Meanwhile, loud voices emanated from the back of the restaurant, 1 male and 1 female. It seemed the boys were seeking refuge from whatever was unfolding inside. "Sounds like there's quite a commotion in there," I remarked, attempting to strike up a polite conversation without intruding. Both boys looked up at me, the older one flashing a small smile. "Edward showed up to work drunk again," he explained. "Mom's thinking of firing him, but he's the only cook she can find. If he's out, she'll have to close up shop. She can't handle cooking and waiting tables at the same time. I assume you guys lend a hand around here. The restaurant sells beer, so Larry and I can't work in the dining room until we're 18 according to state law. We can pitch in the kitchen, but that doesn't really help Mom out much." Just then, Edward stumbled out the back door of the kitchen. It was clear from his failed attempts to get up that he was drunk. "And don't even think about coming back, you bastard." That marked my first encounter with Megan Fields, a Cajun woman adrift in Florida. She stood at the kitchen door, fury blazing in her eyes. It was fortunate for Edward that she didn't have anything in her hands. Otherwise, she might have hurled it at him. Megan was nearly 6 feet tall, all muscle. Her uniform did nothing to flatter her, and it was apparent she was not well endowed. I don't typically notice a woman's chest, but the absence was striking in this case. I scolded myself for being so tactless and tried to push the immature thought aside. She had shoulder-length auburn hair and sharp cheekbones that accentuated her dark brown eyes. The lack of makeup added to her less than feminine appearance. She was a tough woman who clearly had a hard life. She stood with her hands on her hips as Edward stumbled away across the parking lot. "What the hell are you looking at?" She sounded as angry with me as she had been with Edward. "My name is Ryan Turner. I was looking for a job." I don't know what possessed me to say that. I wasn't actually looking for a job, but it seemed like the best thing to say at the time. Something about the whole exchange set off a fit of giggles in the 2 boys. "Larry, Charles, get yourselves inside and start getting ready for lunch. There's nothing funny about this, and I don't appreciate your attitude," marked the stern voice of the woman I come to know as Megan, the Wicked Witch of the South, as the boys hurried indoors. Turning her attention back to me, she asked, "My name is Megan. Do you have any restaurant experience?" "I have 2 years under my belt at Cap D's, mostly in food prep and cooking. I'm not a master chef, but I can handle myself in a kitchen, I replied, inexplicably drawn into this game despite knowing it would wear thin soon. Yet her intensity fascinated me, holding my attention like a moth to a flame. My first day as a cook at Sadie's Catfish House went fairly smoothly. I made a few mistakes with orders, but nothing disastrous. The boys proved to be helpful, guiding me through standard procedures and locating supplies. It was mostly a routine of breading and frying. While I was more accustomed to batter-fried fish, the process was similar enough. The real hassle was cleaning the fryers after the lunch rush. I doubted they'd been cleaned in a year. Despite having a relatively simple oil filter system, it was still messy work. Megan and I spent the afternoon prepping for dinner service. She gave me a crash course in making coleslaw her way and went over the menu to address any questions I might have. Catfish dominated the menu. Though it hadn't been discussed explicitly, I got the sense she assumed I was here to stay. Flattered and intrigued, I found myself with plenty of time to spare and enjoyed the challenge. After we finished cleaning up in the evening, Megan handed me a cold long neck, and we sat down to talk. If I forget, I want to thank you for helping me out today. I really appreciated your assistance. No problem. For $20 an hour, I'm game for just about anything. Whoa, hold up. Where did the $20 figure come from? Just trying to gauge how grateful you are. Edward gets $6 an hour. I don't have to, and I can't afford to pay that minimum wage. I can bump it up a little, but don't get too greedy. 6 is fine, Mrs. Fields. My big issue is a place to stay. The boys and I live in one of the trailers across the street. Nicole, the owner, lives in the big one. I rent the restaurant from her. Her son, Mark, runs the gas station and lives in the third trailer. There's a storage room upstairs, but it's bare. You can use the restaurant's toilet, and I can let you shower in the trailer. And how much for these luxurious accommodations? How about free overtime? I pay you for 40 hours a week, and anything over that you do for free. Are you open every day? I close Mondays. It's my day at the beauty spa. I found her humor suited her personality. How could I not like this woman? The first night in the storage room was rough. It was dusty, dirty, and the floor was hard. But it was better than sleeping in the Subaru. The nice thing was that I had a full kitchen to cook breakfast. After a week, I had settled in quite comfortably. I rang up Christina and gave her the address. She had a handful of mail to send down, hopefully containing some checks. On the first Monday, I headed into Palatka and set up a bank account along with a safety deposit box. It was a relief to finally unload all that cash I'd been carrying around. I took the boys with me and picked up some second-hand furniture. They enjoyed lending a hand, and I cherished their company. Showering in Megan's trailer felt awkward to me. I felt like I was imposing on her. So, with some PVC pipe and a bit of time, I rigged up an outdoor shower behind the restaurant. It resembled a cabana setup and worked out well, as long as the weather wasn't too chilly. The boys pitched in with setting it up and even tested it out first. Megan's husband had been killed on an offshore drilling raid 8 years ago during a hurricane. She received some insurance money from the incident and used it to start the restaurant. Mick Hall, and she got along fairly well. Larry and Charles spent a lot of time with me, perhaps seeking a father figure. My relationship with their mother remained strictly professional. There were moments when I thought of her differently, but I didn't want to risk jeopardizing a good thing. It was time to touch base with my daughters. Luckily, they were both at Penn State, so I only needed to make one call. From Ashley's voice, I could tell she was the one who answered the phone. "Hey, it's Dad. Just wanted to catch up with you guys. Is Haley around?" "Haley's in class. We were waiting for your call. Mom's been acting weird." "Haley, and I need to hear your side. What's going on?" "Sorry about the confusion, kiddo. So what's Mom's explanation?" "She said she set up a romantic anniversary dinner for you both at a steakhouse. Your boss helped out, but when you got there, you saw them together and freaked." Mom didn't get a chance to explain. She seemed really upset. Well, Ashley, that's quite the tale. But it's just that, a tale. Your mom didn't know I'd be there. She was shocked when I showed up. I called her from inside the restaurant before she even knew I was there. She told me she was at home doing laundry. When she saw me, she panicked. It wasn't a surprise party. My boss and your mom planned for me to be out of town so they could meet up. Caught her red-handed, and now she's scrambling to cover it up. That sounds more believable. What do you want us to do? And why are you calling from Savannah? I'm not actually in Savannah, just got the phone there. Try not to be too hard on your mom, but see if you can get her to come clean. Got it. Anything else? If you're going home for Thanksgiving, go into the den and grab my passport, birth certificate, and the Subaru title. Mail them to Aunt Christina's. She'll get them to me. And whatever you do, don't give Mom my cell number. I don't want to have to change it again. Apologies for everything, Dad. Haley and I are here to support you if you need anything. Thanks. Oh, and by the way, I've got all your tuition money, so no need to worry about that. I felt relieved knowing that was taken care of, although I dreaded having to break the news to Ashley about her mother. I was sure Ashley believed what I told her. Michelle's explanation was interesting, given the circumstances, but it wouldn't hold up. I was curious about the affair, but the pain it would cause wasn't worth it. Things were going smoothly at the catfish house. I received the checks from Christina and the documents the girls sent down. I'd soon get new Florida car tags when the PA ones expired. I deposited my restaurant paychecks into my bank account, but the rest of the money stayed in the safety deposit box. With the low interest rates, it felt safer there, and I didn't feel like I was missing out on much. I ate at work all week, so Mondays were my chance for something different. The boys were always up for it, and Megan naturally joined us. It was my treat, and though neither of us admitted it, it felt like a sort of date. Chinese buffets were the favorite, but sushi was growing on us too. Sometimes we ended up dragging quite a bit, but I didn't mind. Megan had mellowed out significantly. I hadn't seen her nasty side since that first day. Sometimes I caught her looking at me while we worked, but she quickly looked away. I was still married, but Megan was starting to catch my eye. The restaurant maintained a steady flow of customers, but its earnings barely covered expenses. I lived on a shoestring budget. Megan's payment went straight to the bank, leaving me with minimal living costs. I only splurged on a tank of gas each month and our Monday night outings with what had become my surrogate family, Larry, Charles, and Megan. I'm not sure how or when they became family to me. It just seemed to happen naturally. Nicole, on the other hand, had her lunch at Sadie's every day, courtesy of Megan. You could see she was growing weary of the menu. Despite being just an employee, I kept my observations to myself, silently noting the preferences of our mainly local clientele, who seemed more interested in the beer than the catfish. Just before Christmas, Haley called. "Dad, how are things going?" "All right, I guess. No complaints. Is it tuition time again?" "Next month. I just wanted to check in and make sure you're okayed for the holidays." "I'm good. You and Ashley will be with your mother, I assume." "Yeah, but we're not exactly looking forward to it, especially now that we know the whole story. Would you mind filling me in? You're not going to like it, but you were right about everything. Mom and Mr. Roberts were seeing each other for over a year. Eventually, she admitted it was a fulfilling relationship. She doesn't want a divorce, but she also doesn't want to end things with him. She said she was hoping to keep everything the way it was because it was perfect for her. She started telling us details, and Ashley, and I had to ask her to stop. Ashley is barely speaking to Mom anymore." "You're correct. I didn't want to hear that. What's her relationship with Roberts like now?" "Oh, there isn't one. He got fired from his job and blamed her. His wife filed for divorce, and he blamed Mom for that too. Last I heard, he moved to Chicago and didn't ask Mom to go with him. Mom got a job at an insurance company answering phones. She ran out of money very quickly after you left and couldn't even pay the utility bills. She's just scraping by now, but I think she's selling off her jewelry and stuff. The bank told her she didn't have to make the house payments anymore if she signed a release. I think she's going to try and sell it instead. I'll send you a power of attorney form so that your mother can sell a house more easily. You can give it to her when you go home for Christmas. She'll probably appreciate that. She was wondering why you hadn't filed for divorce yet. I'm not going to. When she's ready, she'll have to do it. I have no money, no job, and I'm living off what I took from the bank when I left. It'll run out very soon. I saw no reason to let my daughters or my wife know that I had a nice stash in a Palatka bank waiting for my day of freedom. My wife had never shown an interest in our finances, and unless she got a really good lawyer, she'd never know. I figured she'd go for the cheapest lawyer she could find. I'll inform her when we head downstairs. Haley, I apologize for not getting you and the girls anything for the holidays this year. I'll make it up to you, I promise. After the first of the year, just let us know where you are, and we can come visit you during spring break. You can make it up to us then. It's a deal. Have a wonderful Christmas. For the past month or so, I've been using Megan's shower. She always managed to find something else to do while I was there, so there was no chance for anything improper. Northern Florida gets cold, so I had to rely on her facilities for a couple of months. I had reached the point where I wouldn't mind a bit of inappropriate behavior on her part, but I wasn't smooth enough to orchestrate such a thing. I was afraid that if I did something wrong, it would upset her. Typically, when I showered, the boys were at school. Feeling guilty for not getting my daughters anything for Christmas, I felt even worse when I got the boys new Game Boys and Megan a turquoise Conco belt. She always wore her blouses out, and I couldn't help but imagine how good she would look with the right accessories. We closed the Catfish house early on Christmas Eve and exchanged gifts. Megan and the boys got me a GPS for the Subaru. We indulged in boiled shrimp and whole cronits. It was enjoyable for a while, but the boys wanted to play with their new toys. Megan told them to go home and not wait up. Charles winked and gave me a thumbs up as they left. It looked like it was going to be a good holiday. Megan and I chatted for about an hour. We avoided any mention of our previous spouses. Even though I was still married, Megan didn't seem to mind. Since I was painfully slow on the uptake, she finally took my hand and led me upstairs. Both of us had months of pent-up frustration about to explode. It became a race to shed our clothes. Megan had the physique of a female weightlifter, with well-defined abs reminiscent of those seen on Bowflex commercials. Instead of soft breasts, she had firm, wonderful globes that showed no hint of sag despite having 2 kids. My fascination with her lack of ample chest adornment was unfounded. She was truly beautiful. We spent a wonderful night together, enjoying each other's company and getting to know one another. Afterward, we cuddled under the blanket for a few minutes, and she looked up and said, "Merry Christmas, Ryan Turner." Hearing the boys downstairs, Megan jumped out of bed and began to dress. By the time I made it downstairs, the boys were already eating breakfast. Charles gave me a big grin and another thumbs up, while Larry seemed oblivious to what was going on. I ate with the boys while their mom went home to take a shower. At that moment, a terrible thought crossed my mind about birth control. After that night, spending time with Megan became a regular occurrence. She didn't usually stay overnight, but it was nice when she did. I think Charles explained the facts of life to Larry shortly after the holidays, and both boys seemed okay with the arrangement. After the new year, Christina forwarded divorce papers. Michelle included a small note thanking me for the power of attorney and informing me that she had an offer on the house. The divorce proceedings were simple and straightforward. I was responsible for the girls' school tuition, and that was about it. I signed the papers and mailed them back to Michelle's lawyer. I realized I had revealed my location, but I no longer cared. Megan approached me about revamping the restaurant menu, giving me free rein to make changes as I saw fit. Though I was initially hesitant to take on such a task, I appreciated her confidence in me. Our seafood wholesaler was more than willing to include frozen whitefish portions in our weekly catfish delivery. Charles was enthusiastic about learning to make fish and chips, albeit the American version of the British classic. Megan and I managed everything during the school year, handling the slow but steady business with ease. However, we hadn't anticipated the consequences of increased business. On weekends, I persuaded the boys to help with painting. My standards weren't too high, so I was content with whatever they accomplished. While the entire business was Megan's, I sensed she wanted me to take on a greater role in its operation. Initially, I only made suggestions, but over time she seemed relieved when I took charge of decisions without consulting her. She never criticized or complained about my choices. Running a business like this wasn't my initial plan, but it felt like it was becoming my destiny. I hope that doesn't sound too profound. Mark caught the entrepreneurial bug and even spruced up the gas station. A call to his distributor resulted in shiny new signs and updated pumps that accepted credit cards. Once cleaned up, a salesman convinced him to install racks selling various tourist items, all at no cost to Mark, who received a cut of each sale. It elevated the station's appearance, making it seem less like a rundown establishment. Charles celebrated his 16th birthday by obtaining his learner's permit, and I thoroughly enjoyed teaching him how to drive her Outback. Megan seemed relieved that she didn't have to take on that task. In 2 years, it would be Larry's turn. One day, a good old boy from near Moss Bluff showed up with a pickup truck loaded with a freezer full of gator tail meat. He spent a good 30 minutes trying to convince me of the nutritional merits of eating reptiles. While he knew his subject matter well, he was a terrible salesman. I tried to show interest so as not to hurt his feelings. He also had some frozen cooter in the truck, and I got the sense he was feeling the pressure when he made a smart move. "I'll leave you 10 pounds of gator tail and 10 pounds of turtle for you to try out, free of charge. I'll be back in a week to see how things go. Would that be okay with you, mister?" He completely caught me off guard. I had been feeling confident, but he hit me with a zinger. "Sure, I'd be glad to give it a try. Any preparation suggestions?" "Most people just like to fillet it, bread it, and fry it. If I decide I like it, how much is this going to cost me?" He reached into the truck and handed me a green sheet of paper with prices, phone numbers, and state permit numbers to sell the gator and the snapping turtle meat. Depending on the portions I served, it would be possible to make a nice profit with what he had if I could sell it. "Thank you, Mr. Allen. I'd be happy to give it a try. See you in a week." His name, phone number, and address adorned the top of the sheet. The fish and chips menu item was a hit. Initially only offered during evenings when Charles was on duty, it quickly became an all-day option. By the end of the week, the gator and cooter were sold out, prompting a call to Frank Allen for more. The most popular dish turned out to be a combo platter featuring gator, cooter, and catfish. Business was booming faster than expected. Megan and I usually handled the dishwashing after meals, but the increase in customers left us short on clean dishes. That's when we hired Hector. Hector didn't speak much English, but he was proficient at washing dishes and never complained. He rode his bicycle to the restaurant daily and worked both lunch and dinner shifts. We had no idea where he lived. When Frank Allen delivered the gator and cooter the following Saturday, he brought a young girl with him. Charles eagerly assisted in carrying the bags of frozen meat from the truck, barely taking his eyes off the girl, which led to a comical stumble. She appeared to be around Charles' age, maybe slightly older. Megan seemed amused by the scene, and at supper that night, we all enjoyed teasing him about it. February came to an unexpected close. I was just getting the fryer started when Megan returned to the kitchen. "Surprise, Ryan, you've got a visitor." "Your wife's here," Megan announced, her tone utterly neutral. I couldn't discern any emotion from her, no happiness, sadness, or concern. With a resigned exhale, I stepped out into the dining area to see Michelle for the first time in months. She looked as stunning as ever, her hair and makeup flawless, her outfit highlighting her figure. Megan stayed behind in the kitchen. "Hi, Ryan. You're not easy to track down." "You're looking good," Michelle greeted me. "You too. I wasn't expecting to see you. Is there a specific reason for your visit?" I sensed her nervousness. She was chewing her lip and shifting her weight. "I just wanted to give you the final divorce decree. It went through faster than expected, and I thought you'd want it ASAP." She handed me a folded document, which I didn't bother opening. "The house has been sold and settled, so I brought a check for half of the proceeds. It's only $23,000. I didn't realize the realtor's commission would be so high." She passed me a cashier's check with my name on it. I took it and endorsed it. When I handed it back, she looked at me questioningly. "I don't need the money, Michelle. Keep it. It'll help you get started. Just curious, what are your plans?" "I've sold everything except my clothes. I'm on my way to stay with my sister in Dallas. She has a job lined up for me at the same place where she works. The girls have promised to come down and visit next summer. I hope everything works out for you. Do you have any questions or anything you want to discuss before I go?" "No, not really. I'm good. I don't need to know any more than I do now. In fact, just having you here is more than I can handle. Thanks for dropping off the papers. Excuse me now. I have to get back to work. The lunch crowd will be here soon." I turned and walked into the kitchen without looking back. I was trying not to be rude, but I didn't want to be with her any longer than I had to. Many people will say I was cold, but I don't care. There is nothing I could do to her that would make up for what she did to me. Megan was standing in the kitchen, looking out over the river. There was still no expression on her face. I walked to the end of the room and looked out over the parking lot. Michelle had just gotten into her car and was sitting in the driver's seat, crying. A minute later she was gone, and I would never see her again. "I apologize, Megan. I had no idea she would turn up here. I'm not even sure how she found me. I understand it's not my place, but what did she want?" She gave me my copy of the final divorce decree. "She's free now. And you. I'm not so fortunate. I've managed to get myself tangled up again, this time with a captivating Cajun queen. I suppose I'm just a sucker for extraordinary women." "I don't see a ring on your finger. How about tomorrow?" Finally, I received a response. Megan had a wide grin as she wrapped her arms around my neck. After several minutes of passionate kissing, she pulled back and looked at me. "Do you remember our Christmas Eve together?" "Of course. How could I ever forget?" "Well, congratulations. You're going to be a father." We got married the next day, and I moved out of the storeroom. The boys were just as thrilled as I was. Nicole's visits to the restaurant ceased, so Megan started bringing light meals or soup to her trailer after the rush. One day, Mark sat down with Megan and me, telling us it was time for Nicole to move to an assisted living facility. To afford it, she had to sell the marina complex, though it wasn't much of a marina anymore. Nicole was still sharp and clear-headed. I didn't discuss it with Megan, but I began negotiations with Nicole. It took most of my savings, but I bought the entire operation, including the trailers. The only condition was that Mark could continue running the gas station and boat slips. I'd pay him a salary and provide free lodging in his trailer, which worked out well for both of us since the station was profitable. I upgraded the kitchen with a dishwasher, which made Hector very happy. We also hired a waitress to assist Megan, hoping to have her trained by Megan's due date. The waitress, a single mom with 2 kids, was thrilled when we offered her the empty trailer at a fair rate. Epilogue. As the year progressed, the marina flourished beyond our expectations. Business boomed, and we introduced boat-run shrimp and peel-and-eat platters, catering to our female customers. By the end of summer, we had a dozen full-time boats in the new slips, with a waiting list for any available slots. Money wasn't an issue, just time. I felt content and happy. Charles found a steady relationship with Frank Allen's daughter, Tracy. He spent every chance he could on the outback. Larry started working with Mark and even asked his mom if he could take over the gas station when Mark retired. We hadn't realized Mark was considering retirement, and it seemed a couple of years away. Charles expressed his desire to stay with the restaurant. After a few days with their mother, Haley and Ashley came to spend the rest of the summer helping out. They found staying in the storeroom amusing and didn't mention their mother. Megan got along great with my daughters. They say the gender of a baby is determined by the father's genes. In September, Megan had a baby girl, whom we named Nicole. When our first wedding anniversary arrived, Megan asked where I wanted to go to celebrate. I replied, anywhere but a steakhouse.